In a remote town that barely appeared on any map, there was a coffin shop people rarely dared to enter. Not because it looked abandoned, not because it was frightening, but because of the price, 400 million for a single coffin. No bargaining, no explanation, no exceptions. Ordinary people laughed when they heard the number. Some cursed under their breath, convinced the old woman who owned the shop had long since lost her mind. They turned away without a second thought, but those who truly understood reacted very differently. Feng shui masters, wealthy businessmen burdened by unseen calamities, families who had narrowly escaped death. They didn't argue about the price, they begged, because within certain circles there was a saying passed quietly from mouth to mouth. Her coffins do not bury the dead, they change the fate of the living. Every coffin crafted by the old woman carried something intangible: fortune, protection, balance. Families who used them to rebury ancestors suddenly prospered. Businesses stabilized after years of chaos. Terminal illnesses mysteriously halted. This was no superstition, it was a transaction, and from the very beginning it was clear. This was a world where the rules did not belong to ordinary humans. Here, life and death were negotiable. Fate could be altered. And the cost was never just money. Chu Xiao Yu grew up inside that coffin shop. The scent of wood and incense filled his childhood. The sound of chisels striking timber echoed through his nights. The old woman was his only family, his grandmother, his teacher, his shield against a world he didn't understand. Everything changed when he turned 19. That year, the old woman stopped making coffins. No warning, no explanation. When Xiao Yu finally asked why, she looked at him with an expression he had never seen before, calm, resolute, and filled with the weight of finality. "If I make another coffin," she said quietly, "you will die. Not in the future. Not someday." She told him the truth that shattered everything he believed. Chu Xiao Yu had died before he was ever born. He had died in his mother's womb. His existence violated the natural order. The life he was living did not belong to him. The soul anchoring him to this world had been stolen. Stolen from a gold-plated coffin hidden deep within the cave of 10,000 ghosts. A forbidden place where countless restless spirits were sealed. A place no living person was meant to enter. The old woman had gone there. She had taken a life that did not belong to her. She had forced fate itself to bend. And that was why Xiao Yu existed, suspended between life and death, neither fully alive nor truly dead. To continue living, there was only one path left. He had to inherit the craft of coffin making, not just the skill, but the karma, the sin, and the calamities that followed those who dared to steal from fate. The earth tribulation did not arrive with thunder or screams. It came quietly. A red mark appeared on Xiao Yu's wrist, thin, vivid, unmistakable. It didn't hurt, it didn't itch, but it burned against his vision like fresh blood. The old woman took one look and understood. The underworld had found him. This was not a heavenly tribulation sent by the skies. This was an earth tribulation, judgment from below. At exactly 12 o'clock midnight, underworld envoys would arrive to reclaim a life that never should have existed. No negotiations, no delays, because to the underworld, Chu Xiao Yu was already a corpse walking. To resist the tribulation, the old woman sent Xiao Yu back to his ancestral village with a single command. He must kneel at every household. He must ask for a piece of coffin wood from each. Not more, not less, exactly 100 pieces before sunset. What terrified him was not the task, but the reaction. Before he could explain, villagers were already bringing out the wood. No one questioned him, no one asked why. Their faces carried neither surprise nor fear. It was as if they had been waiting. The village was not ordinary, it never had been. It existed at the edge of the living world, a place where humans coexisted with things they refused to name. When Xiao Yu returned, the 100 pieces of wood were assembled into a coffin. Then the old woman lay inside it. Before closing her eyes, she gave him strict instructions. Do not open the door. Do not reveal the ritual, no matter what voices you hear outside. Then she stopped breathing. The moment her pulse vanished, something emerged from the shadows. A massive white serpent slithered out from beneath the coffin, lowered its head, and bowed before her body. Not in aggression, but in reverence. That single act revealed everything. The old woman was not merely a coffin maker, and the white serpent was no ordinary spirit or demon. The earth tribulation had begun, and Chu Xiao Yu's path of defying fate had officially crossed the point of no return. Time slowed inside the coffin shop. The oil lamp flickered, its flame stretching unnaturally long, as if even fire hesitated to exist in that moment. Chu Xiao Yu sat motionless beside the coffin, every muscle in his body tense, listening. Then came the knock, soft, careful, almost polite. It did not sound like danger. Xiao Yu, the voice seeped through the wooden door like mist under a crack, gentle, familiar, trembling with restrained fear. It was Zhang Yinger. She was someone Xiao Yu knew, someone he trusted. Her voice carried exhaustion, panic, and something dangerously close to relief, as if she had finally found safety. I know you're inside, she said. Please, open the door. The rules echoed in his mind. Do not open the door, no matter who comes, no matter what you hear. Outside, the voice continued. She spoke of being chased, of shadows following her through the village, of footsteps that did not belong to the living. I can hear them breathing behind. Me, she whispered. If you don't open the door, I'll die. Xiao Yu's fingers dug into his palms. His instinct screamed at him to move, to help, to save her. Every part of him that was still human recoiled at the thought of standing by while someone begged for their life. The knock came again, this time harder. Behind the voice, something else stirred. He heard murmurs, low, wet, layered. The sound of many throats whispering at once. The door trembled faintly, as if pressed from the outside by too many hands. He knew then, if he opened the door, it would not just be Zhang Yinger who stepped inside. It would be everything behind her. The truth was cruel and absolute. Compassion at the wrong moment becomes a sin. If he interfered with karmic flow, he would inherit the consequences. The earth tribulation was not testing his strength, but his resolve. Tears welled in his eyes. His breathing grew uneven, but he did not move. Minutes passed. The voice grew weaker, desperate, then distorted, stretching unnaturally, layered with something hollow and ancient. Finally, silence fell. When dawn arrived, the doorstep was empty. No blood, no body. Only faint scorch marks on the ground, as if something had been dragged back into the soil. Xiao Yu understood then. He had passed the first trial. But the cost of survival had etched itself deep into his soul. The air changed at noon, not colder, not darker, heavier. The shadows inside the shop thickened, clinging to the walls like damp cloth. The oil lamp extinguished itself without warning. Two figures emerged at the doorway, one dressed in black, one dressed in white. Their faces were expressionless, skin pale as old parchment. Their eyes were voids, bottomless, patient, eternal. Black and white impermanence, underworld enforcers. They did not knock, they did not announce themselves, they simply stepped inside and the world bent around them. Chu Xiao Yu, the one in white, said calmly, "You do not belong among the living." The one in black unfolded a scroll, its surface stained with dried blood and ancient ink. Name recorded, fate exhausted, life stolen. Their voices were not threatening, they did not need to be. They were inevitability given form. Without resistance, Xiao Yu stood. The 100-wood coffin creaked open by itself. Inside, it was empty. The old woman was gone. Before he could react, invisible hands seized him. His body stiffened as he was forced backward, lowered into the coffin. The lid slammed shut with a thunderous finality. Darkness swallowed him whole. From within the coffin, he heard chanting, low, rhythmic, ancient. The air grew thick, pressing against his chest. Each breath felt borrowed. "This is procedure," Black Impermanence said from outside, "a life reclaimed." The coffin began to sink, not physically, but spiritually. Xiao Yu felt himself slipping downward, as if the world above was peeling away, layer by layer. Then, a deafening hiss tore through the air. Wood splintered. The coffin shook violently as something massive struck it from above. A blinding white light burst through the cracks. The white serpent emerged fully this time, its body coiling through the shop, scales gleaming like moonlit jade. Its eyes were ancient, older than the underworld itself. It positioned itself between the coffin and the two enforcers, not attacking, blocking. The serpent bowed its head once toward Xiao Yu. Then it turned. Black and white impermanence stiffened. "A guardian spirit?" White Impermanence said, voice sharpening. "No, this presence." The serpent opened its mouth. From within, a bagua mirror fell and shattered against the floor, reforming instantly, radiant with Taoist symbols. The mirror floated upright, facing the enforcers. Light flared. 3 flames ignited within Yao Yu's chest, flickering but undeniable. 3 yang fires, the mark of a living soul. The shop trembled as the mirror's verdict echoed through the space. Living. Silence followed. Black Impermanence slowly rolled up the scroll. "This life is improperly registered," he said, "but not yet void." White Impermanence met the serpent's gaze. "This is a delay," he said coldly, "not forgiveness." The serpent did not respond. It did not need to. The underworld enforcers stepped back. The pressure lifted, the shadows loosened their grip. The air returned to normal, but before leaving, White Impermanence spoke once more. "Earth tribulation is postponed. Not cancelled. 3 years for a minor tribulation. 9 years for a major one. When the balance tips again, we will return." Then they vanished. The coffin cracked open. Xiao Yu gasped for air, his body drenched in cold sweat. He stared at the ceiling, knowing one truth with painful clarity. He had not escaped fate. He had merely earned time. The white serpent lowered its head one final time. Somewhere, beyond the visible world, a deeper mechanism had begun to turn, and the price for stolen life would eventually be paid. The underworld had retreated, but silence did not mean safety. After Black and White Impermanence vanished, the coffin shop felt hollow, like a battlefield after the dead had been collected. The white serpent coiled itself beside the 100-wood coffin, unmoving, as though guarding something far more fragile than flesh. Chu Xiao Yu sat on the floor for a long time before he finally spoke. Why the cave of 10,000 ghosts? The serpent's eyes flickered. It did not answer immediately. Instead, memories began to surface, not his own, but fragments pressed into the air itself. Scenes folded over one another like torn pages in an ancient book. Long before Xiao Yu was born, Longming Mountain had been a place of balance. A living dragon vein ran through it, nourishing the land, anchoring heaven and earth. But balance attracts greed. A Taoist in purple robes came seeking power beyond mortal limits. To seize the dragon vein, he severed it, cutting the living dragon in half. The severed half became a source of endless resentment, transforming into a poisonous dragon spirit. To suppress it, the Taoist sacrificed himself. He sealed his own body inside a gold-plated coffin, sinking it deep into a cavern beneath the mountain, the cave of 10,000 ghosts. There the dead gathered, spirits with unfinished business, souls denied reincarnation, all bound by one purpose, to keep the poisoned dragon asleep. But suppression was not erasure. The gold coffin absorbed resentment, cycle after cycle, until it became something else entirely, not a prison, but a repository of stolen fate. And that was where the old woman had gone. She had taken one life from the coffin, or rather, two. Xiao Yu's breath caught. "You mean," he whispered, "there were two lives inside that coffin?" The serpent lowered its head. One belonged to the Taoist, long, since eroded by resentment. The other was never meant to be claimed. The moment that life was taken, the balance sealing the poisoned dragon weakened. And the heavens noticed. Xiao Yu finally understood. His existence was not just an error, it was a loosened seal. Somewhere beneath Longming Mountain, something ancient had stirred. And when it fully awakened, everyone connected to the stolen fate would be pulled into the reckoning. At dawn, the white serpent finally spoke, not in words, but in certainty. "If you wish to live," it conveyed, "you must prepare, not for comfort, not for peace, for endurance." The old woman had not truly died. Her absence was deliberate, a final act to sever Xiao Yu from immediate retribution. But before vanishing, she had left behind 3 instructions, not requests, conditions. The first task led Xiao Yu back to his ancestral land. The grave of his grandfather lay undisturbed for decades, positioned carefully according to old feng shui principles. On the surface, it appeared correct. Too correct. When Xiao Yu dug beneath the headstone, his shovel struck something hollow. Not earth, not bone, a buried spike. A foreign object had been driven into the grave. An act meant to rupture the flow of ancestral fortune. Someone had tampered with the burial site years ago, redirecting misfortune toward his bloodline. This was no accident. It was the first proof that Xiao Yu's family had been targeted long before his birth. The spike was removed. The land sighed, but the damage had already taken root. The second instruction took him to the Jin family. 10 years earlier, they had come seeking help. A disaster loomed over their household, an unavoidable calamity tied to lineage and choice. The old woman had offered a solution, a marriage, not love, not obligation, but balance. Now the debt was due. The Jin family welcomed Xiao Yu with forced smiles. Their daughter stood behind them, pale and silent, fully aware of what her future represented. Xiao Yu refused. "Marriage forced by fate becomes resentment," he said, "and resentment breeds disaster." Instead, he altered the arrangement. redirecting the calamity without binding two lives together. It was harder, riskier, but it honored free will. The Jin family's crisis eased, and Xiao Yu learned a crucial rule. You may guide fate, you may not enslave it. The final instruction was the most dangerous. The dragon bone mirror lay hidden within a collapsed shrine near Longming Mountain. Forged from ancient remains, it reflected not appearance, but destiny. Most who looked into it lost their minds. Xiao Yu stood before it anyway. The reflection that stared back was wrong. He saw himself, yet not fully human. His shadow split into layers, one rooted in the living world, one anchored to the underworld, and a third watching from somewhere higher. The mirror revealed the truth. Chu Xiao Yu was no longer a single fate. He was a junction point, a living vessel holding conflicting destinies in fragile balance. When the mirror cracked, the message was complete. Survival was possible, but only through preparation, a future written in tribulations. Before the serpent departed, it left him with a final warning. Every 3 years, a minor tribulation. Every 9 years, a major one. To endure them, you must gather the 5 elements of wood. And one day, craft the 5-element coffin. Only then could he face the poisoned dragon. Only then might he see the old woman again. As the sun rose over Longming Mountain, Chu Xiao Yu stood alone, alive but no longer innocent. He had time, not mercy, and fate, once stolen, would eventually come to collect its debt.